Hey Jared, ready to start filming my next episode?
Yes. But first, I think you need to take a look at this.
What is it?
It's a letter.
Is it the letter that crazy fanboy stole from me when he hijacked my show last episode?
I don't think so.
I guess that important plot point hasn't come up yet.
Well, open it and see what it is.
Alrighty then. Dear Nathan, bad news has reached me. I must be off at once. Though I have watched every episode of your show, I cannot be there to send you off myself. Is this guy stalking me or something?
You really think someone would go through all that trouble?
Point taken. I would like you to review Bilbo Baggins' quest in the new Hobbit film. You had better leave your house soon and get to the theater before 9 p.m. to get in line for the midnight showing. Doesn't this guy know that the last time I tried to do a review, I got mugged and my show was hijacked? You're probably saying that you got mugged and your show hijacked the last time you tried to do a review. You are capable of more than you realize. I will return as soon as I can, and I will watch you if I find that you have posted a review. Leave a message for me here, and I can't even begin to pronounce that email address. If you post it by tomorrow, you may meet friends of yours at the theater. They know your business and will watch with you. Make for the theater. All that is gold does not glitter. Not all who wander are lost. Why is this guy reciting lines from Stairway to Heaven now? It's not Stairway to Heaven, you fool of a toque. Yours in haste, G. Mithrandir. Where is this guy from with a name like that? Norway?
How should I know? The thing doesn't even have a return address.
Well, I'm not one to refuse the request of a fan. To the theater!
To the theater!
You got the touch. You got the power. Yeah!
Hello and welcome to But I Digress, the vlog where sometimes my mouth goes faster than my brain. I am your host, Nathan, call me Nate Marchand. And assuming some crazy costume fanboy doesn't show up to punch me out, okay. I'm going to do a first for this vlog. I'm going to review a movie. Today's selection will be The Hobbit, An Unexpected Journey. The first of 3 prequel movies to the ever-popular and famous Lord of the Rings trilogy, produced and directed by Peter Jackson. Sounds kind of familiar, doesn't it? A prequel trilogy to 3 very popular movies? Fantasy movies, I might add? Yeah, we'll leave it at that. Anyway, I want to preface this video by saying that I do know what I'm talking about when it comes to Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit. I have been rereading The Hobbit in anticipation of this movie, so everything is fresh in my mind as I go into this. And I would like to add, Lord of the Rings is my all-time favorite book. Which I know sounds a little bit strange that a science fiction writer would have a high fantasy book as his favorite book, but I digress. So, let us begin. First, I should probably talk about what I thought of the previous movies. the Lord of the Rings trilogy specifically. I'm, for the most part, happy with all of them. There's plenty of things to like in them. There are a lot of things that they got right and were made sure to include in those movies. Peter Jackson is a fan of the books, which was a great thing. You'd have to have a love for this literature in order to do it justice on screen, I would say, most of the time. Are they perfect? No, there were some things that were done that I didn't agree with, and some things that were left out that I wish hadn't been left out. But like I said, for the most part, I think they are very well done movies, and certainly capture the spirit of the books. And I think so. I'm not one of those raging fanboys who gets ticked at every little thing that they changed. I understand that things have to change when you adapt a book into a movie. Though, that being said, I went into this with some pretty high expectations and with some high hopes for the movie. I knew it was in capable hands. Now, for those of you who are unfamiliar with The Hobbit, it is the story of Bilbo Baggins, a young hobbit who is commissioned by Gandalf the Wizard to go with a troop of 13 dwarves to go liberate a treasure hoard from an evil dragon. That is the story in a nutshell, and they have lots and lots of adventures along the way. Meeting elves and trolls and giant spiders and the men of Lake Town, all kinds of great things. It's an incredible adventure, and if you haven't read the book, I highly recommend that you do it. In fact, you know what? If you haven't read, if you've seen the Lord of the Rings movies, or maybe you've seen The Hobbit already and you haven't read those books yet, stop this video right now and go read them. Right now. I don't care. Just go do it. Right now. Do yourself a favor and just go read those books. Please. Then go see the movies or watch them again, and you'll have a greater appreciation. For those of you who are still here, I will now continue. So, where do I begin with The Hobbit? I guess probably with the beginning. It actually opens with Ian Holm, who played Bilbo in the Lord of the Rings movies, narrating the story, and I should say, not this is a narrating story, but he was narrating, and he was writing down the story of what was going on. And then he gives you the background that you need to know. And then in a sequence much like the beginning of the Lord of the Rings movies, you get this huge prologue that explains some important information. In Lord of the Rings, it was showing you the rise and fall of Sauron and him losing the ring. And in this one, it is showing the kingdom of Erebor, the kingdom under the Lonely Mountain, that was run by the dwarves, and it shows you amassing all this wealth and gold, and then Smaug comes in and ruins everything, and it shows Thor and Oakenshield, and, dealing with all of this and being driven out with all of his people and seeing his grandfather die, who was the king of Erebor. And then, what he's been up to since then. And then, in a surprising event, it goes to what you could argue is the present. You see Ian Holm again. And then, out of the blue, you see Elijah Wood as Frodo. And I thought it was just going to be a non-speaking cameo, but it's not. He shows up and he has a whole scene with Ian Holm. And then it ends with him going outside and saying, I'm going to go meet Gandalf. So you're pretty much seeing a scene that would have preceded the first scene with Frodo in Lord of the Rings. Crazy. And then it transitions to Bilbo's story. And it was clever when I did that, but then that's when it transitions. And then after that, it follows Bilbo and the dwarves and everything else. It doesn't go back to present day. Now, when I first heard that this book was being made into a movie, I was excited. And then I heard it was going to be made into 2 movies. And I thought, okay, 2 movies I can understand. That makes sense. Then they upped it to 3. And that's when I started questioning what the heck they thought they were doing. Is all I kept thinking is, why? I mean, come on. It's The Hobbit. It is a much simpler, and I might add shorter story than Lord of the Rings. I mean, look at this. Why do you need 3 movies for this? 3 movies I can understand for Lord of the Rings. I can understand that. And I can understand that they would have to be epics and have to be 3 hours long. That makes sense to me. But why The Hobbit? The first movie is almost 3 hours long. And if the subsequent ones are going to be that long, I mean, it's just, I don't understand. Unless they put, the only reason I can think of to justify is if they put absolutely everything from this book into the dang movie. So, I wasn't sure what to think of that. So, what did they do with it? Well, yeah, there's a huge parts of the book are in there. More than I probably would have expected. But there's also some padding. Now, I'm going to say right now, I'm sure some of this, I'm sure a lot of the padding that's in here, in this movie, is taken from the appendices of Lord of the Rings, which I haven't read in their entirety, or from the Silmarillion, which I have not read yet. I have it, but I just haven't read it yet. So, any of you out there who are commenting on this or watching this video, feel free to correct me if you want, if I am assuming that the padding that was added in here was not Tolkien mythos, it was something written up by the screenwriters. Now, I will say I am pretty sure there is a part of this movie that I am sure is not part of either The Hobbit or of any of the extra materials that Tolkien produced. And that is the inclusion of Radagast the Brown, one of the other 5 wizards that occupy the Lord of the Rings universe. He is mentioned in The Hobbit, and he appears briefly in the book, in the Lord of the Rings book, but that's it. He never does anything else. And he's in this movie for 20 minutes, if not longer. If it was a little cameo, I could understand that. But he's in the movie for a whole 20 minutes. He's an important plot point. He does things that drive the plot in some capacity. That is completely extraneous to the book. That was made up. Mind you, it's still using elements of Tolkien's universe to do it, but it's still made up. However, I will say, Radagast is a great character. He was very fun to watch. And he is played by Sylvester McCoy, who used to be the Doctor in the original Doctor Who show. So, in that regard, it was really cool to watch. Speaking of actors, the acting in this movie is top-notch. And if you know your British actors, there's actually a lot of recognizable faces, and as you'll see later on, recognizable voices as well in this movie. So besides Sylvester McCoy, you know, Ian McKellen comes back as Gandalf, and well, mind you, Hugo Weaving is not British, but you know, Hugo Weaving comes back as Elrond, which was really cool. And obviously, I mentioned Ian Holm and Elijah Wood come back, but the new actors are great as well. And the first one I have to commend on this is Martin Freeman, who plays Bilbo. I can't think of anyone better now to have played Bilbo. And if you're familiar with Martin Freeman's work, he's been Arthur in Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. He's Watson on the new Sherlock show. He knows how to play characters like this. And he plays Bilbo with this magnificent charm to him. As this young hobbit who is used to the simple things of life and just living a simple life. But yet he still has this adventurous streak in him. He wants more. And at first he doesn't want to go with the dwarves, yet he does. And then he reluctantly agrees and he's excited. But then even though he's out on the adventure, he's not sure he wants to do this. And he misses home and he wants to go back. But he ends up befriending the dwarves and loving them and sympathizing with them, so he can't go. And Martin Freeman plays that so well, and he's a delight to watch. I knew if they didn't get a good actor to play Bilbo, this whole movie would fall apart. So I was very happy to see that they got the right guy to star in this movie. Although speaking of Bilbo, that was one of my little issues with the movie. I'm sure this will be remedied in the sequels, but in this one it kind of bugged me a little bit, and that is, well, first, before I go there, I want to talk about the dwarves, which I was
just as excited about how they handle the dwarves in this as well. There's 13 of them, so you have a large cast of characters. But Peter Jackson, in a brilliant move, made sure that each of the dwarves was distinct. Each one of them, even though they're minor characters, they are all incredibly well done. They're distinctive both in their attitudes and their characterization and their appearance. So they don't just blend together, or most of them blend together, then Thorin Oakenshield stands out because he's the leader. No, they are all strong characters, and they all are very distinctive. When you see them, you never get them mixed up. You as soon as they come on the screen, you know who they are. So I give him great credit for that. But that being said, because there's so many characters in this, and each one of them has, especially Thorin, has some sort of story going on, and there are all these other things happening besides the quest that they're on, which a lot of it, I don't know, it could be from the Silmarillion or from the appendices, I don't know. All this stuff going on, there are points where Bilbo kind of gets lost. And I'm a little disappointed by that because it's his story. Now, mind you, like I said, that could change in the sequels, when he will have to play a much larger role as their quest continues. So, that might be a complaint that I have right now that'll mean nothing in the sequels. And once the story is complete, it won't matter. And one of the other great stars of the Lord of the Rings movies is you end up seeing here again, actually, believe it or not, is the setting. These were filmed in New Zealand, and as usual, New Zealand is gorgeous. Absolutely gorgeous. You could use any of these movies as an advertisement to get people to vacation in New Zealand, because the landscapes in this are amazing. Oh, you can't green screen stuff this good. Oh, every time I see these movies, and when I watch Lord of the Rings, when I see The Hobbit, I want to go to New Zealand. I want to visit New Zealand because the landscapes and it's just, they're so beautiful. They have all these mountains and just, I wish I could go there. So if you want to see the great vistas that became trademarks in Lord of the Rings and really do justice to Tolkien's writing when he describes the setting of that, it's all there. There is something I wanted to talk about, and that's the tone of the movie. I felt like it was a little uneven. I think that's the word I want to use. I don't want to say inconsistent, but I think it's more uneven. Because you have to understand, The Hobbit is a children's book, and it was written as a children's book. And by comparison to Lord of the Rings, it's pretty lighthearted. And it has more humor in it. It has its dark moments, it has its scary moments, but it's still pretty kid-friendly. You know, an 8-year-old could read this and really enjoy it, and it would be fine. You know, it's probably a little bit more mature than, say, Narnia by comparison, but, you know, it's still a children's book and reads like a children's book, while Lord of the Rings does not. And there are points throughout much of the movie where they capture that in great ways. There are points where it has that kid-friendly atmosphere and tone, and it's something I can easily show to a kid, and he would probably get a big kick out of it. And then there are points where it wanted to be Lord of the Rings again. It had to be Lord of the Rings again. And it became darker, more serious, and talked about things that ultimately get resolved in Lord of the Rings. It's one of those points where, I kind of jokingly hinted at it, but then it's one of those points where it feels, in some ways, does feel like the Star Wars prequels, where it's setting up all of these things that get resolved later in different movies. You know, I was hoping that it could have been more of a self-contained story, much like The Hobbit, much like the book is. But you go into this, and it definitely seems like it was made assuming that you had already seen the Lord of the Rings movies, and you're going to see this to see how everything gets set up for those movies. But anyway, the tone, like I said, just felt a little bit uneven. Like it would just switch like, it was almost like two different kinds of movies were going on at the same time, you know, and they would switch periodically. It was kind of weird. But I gotta tell you, there was a linchpin for this movie for me. It was a chapter of the book called Riddles in the Dark. And it is my favorite chapter in the entire book. How they did this would determine pretty much how I would feel about not only this movie, but this entire trilogy. And it was also very exciting because Gollum is in it, and everyone seems to love Gollum. So, oh my gosh, it was awesome! Oh, Andy Serkis, if by some act of God you see this, you're the man. You deserve an Oscar. If you were listening to me, Academy, you screwed him over with Lord of the Rings and you wouldn't nominate him when he really did deserve it. It was a full performance. He did the mocap himself. He did the voice. It's him. They just animate over him. Just get over yourselves, and you need to nominate him for Best Supporting Actor in this because, oh my gosh, he is brilliant. So, if you thought Gollum was amazing in Lord of the Rings, they figure out how to make him even better in this. He looks amazing. He looks so good. You forget he's a CGI character. In fact, there are points where he doesn't even seem like a CGI character. He feels like a real deal actor on set, interacting with Bilbo. And I was nerding out so much when I was watching this. That chapter is so important to me. It's important for Bilbo as a character. You get to see Gollum. You see him find the ring. I mean, there's just so much that was riding on that. And it's so clever. I love the riddles, and they do it so well, and the acting is so top notch. There's so much I could say about that. I could go on I just go on and on about how brilliantly it was done. It was so perfect. So absolutely perfect. It's one of those things that I wish I could record it and send it up to Tolkien up in heaven, and he would be just overjoyed by it. He would be so happy. He would look at this and say, you got this right. And hopefully it would have helped him to have a little bit more faith in the movies, because maybe he wasn't very fond of Hollywood, but that's all beside the point. But I digress. Yeah, that's what I should be saying. But I digress. So, it just almost completely redeemed everything else about this movie for me. And because they got that right, I am more than willing to go see the sequels. I'm pretty excited to go see them. So, my final grade for The Hobbit, An Unexpected Journey, would be a B+. It has a solid story, but its key strengths are obviously the power of its performances, and the fact that while it is nearly 3 hours long, it doesn't feel like it's 3 hours long. However, it does have a fair amount of padding in it, a lot of which was not in the original book, and while it was derived from Tolkien's mythology, it seems a little extraneous at the same time. There's a lot I could say about this movie as a Tolkien fan, and I could go on and analyze and compare and all that. I could spend hours talking about it. But I will spare you all of that, and I've tried to limit this review to what I think is important, to what I think are the highlights of the film, and what I think are its key strengths and weaknesses, to give you a pretty good idea, but not only of what I think of it, but whether or not you, as fans, would like to see it. I'm also kind of hoping, I've intended this vlog to be mostly instructional with some entertainment elements in it, and I'm hoping that by doing reviews, it can help facilitate that so you can understand what makes a good story by hearing me talk about what I think of these stories in my reviews. And also, it's a good way for me to interact with all of you and have you get to know me a little bit more through the videos. I would love to hear your feedback on this, hear what you thought of the movie, hear your comments, and start a discussion on my website or on the YouTube channel or on this video. And we can have a nice discussion about all of this. Thank you for joining me this week on But I Digress. This is Marchand, signing off.